What's up guys, it is Gabe McKenney, OCB Pro, currently working towards my IFBB Pro card, naturally. Back at it again with another video. If you guys don't know who I am, I'm the founder and owner of Peak Natty. But today we're gonna be getting into training part 2. All right guys, so training part 2, we're gonna be talking about volume, intensity, frequency, exercise selection, execution, different questions that one might ask about training, why we train to failure. If you guys haven't seen part 1 to the training, definitely go back and watch that before we get into this. That breaks down exactly how muscle is built and how we build muscle on our frames, right? So first things first, let's get into the video. Volume, right? What is training volume? Training volume is the dosage of stimulus. That is just the number of hard sets, right? We have a specific amount of hard sets we want to do every single week in order to achieve muscle growth, right? And the reason we do hard sets is because muscle growth is formed from mechanical tension, which means we need to train close to failure in order to achieve the most mechanical tension, which causes hard sets, right? So training heavy and training close to failure causes these hard sets. And so volume is just simply how many of these all-out working sets is what they're called we do. All right, intensity, next thing you must understand is the degree of stimulus and how heavy and how close to failure you are training, right? We need our intensity to be high in the gym in order to have the most mechanical tension present. Next, frequency, right? That's just the organization of your stimulus, that is your split. I am currently on push-pull legs rest, upper-lower rest, hitting everything twice per week. You should always pretty much aim everything to be hit twice per week. Sometimes you can get into some specialized splits where you hit things 3 times per week as well. All right, exercise selection, that's just simply what machine you are doing at the gym, right? Our regional stimulus, the movement pattern, and muscles involved. Obviously, there are gonna be some better movement patterns than others, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to your execution, which is simply your form. When you hear execution, just think form, simply. It's the way in which you move during a rep, right? Intentional set. And intensity means nothing without good form and good execution. Because if we don't have intentionality and we don't have a good tempo, we don't move the weight, we don't move during a rep properly, right? Our intensity is good, but we're not hitting the muscle and stimulating the muscle in the way we want to, right? And then you can have things like injuries creep up. You can have things like other muscle groups taking over in a movement pattern. That is why execution is so, so important. So these things all coincide with each other, right? You have to have the right number of volume that you can recover from during a training week, right? And we need to have high intensity in training to failure, because if we're not having high intensity, we're doing something which is called junk volume. Junk volume is simply just meaningless sets. It's sets that aren't very stimulating. It's sets that aren't very heavy and close to failure. So certain rep ranges, right? You really honestly want to have a balance of rep ranges, right? 15 reps on the hack squat is not the same thing as 15 reps of a bicep curl, for example. So, there's a lot of training techniques and things that I like to do, like top sets and back offs and, rep ranges, but we will talk about that later. Right now, I want you guys to understand that you must train close to failure for a stimulating set. Whether that's, a rep range of 10 to 15 where, by 14, 15 reps, you're hitting failure, or it's a rep range of 6, right? Where you wouldn't get a 7th rep, right? At the end of the day, what's most important about those 2 sets is taking them to failure or close to failure, right? Frequency, studies show that you should be hitting muscle groups at least 2 times a week in most cases, is gonna be honestly what's best, right? And there's always nuances. Like, for example, a men's physique competitor, does he really need to hit legs twice a week when his legs aren't even judged? No, right? We can prioritize the upper body more. So that is frequency, and that's just the organization of your stimulus. Exercise selection, this can be very, very important because on more bigger muscle groups, things like the back, you want to hit every part of your back, right? And if you don't have a good exercise selection, you're missing, the stimulus to certain muscle groups, right? We also want to have good exercise selection and good, exercise order, right? We don't want to do something that is too fatiguing at the very, very beginning of your workout, because then that takes away from, the other exercises. Same thing, if you have a lagging body part, you should always have the exercise selection of it at the beginning of your workout, because that's where the most effective sets are going to take place when you're nice and fresh. So quad dominant, you got big quads. You ideally would want to do your hamstring work at the beginning of the workout, because your hamstrings are your weaker body part, right? So they get more focus when you do them in the beginning of the exercise selection. So what should be my split? Well, it just depends. So everything depends on how many days a week you can train when it comes to your split, right? If you can only do 3 days a week, typically, obviously there's always nuances, guys, but typical recommendation for 3 days a week is gonna be full body every single time, right? If you can only lift 3 days, you're gonna have to go full body, right? 4 days a week, upper, lower would work great, right? 5 days a week, I really like push, pull, legs, rest, upper, lower, rest. You can also do, a push-pull legs variant where you're only having really one leg day a week, and you hit some hamstring work on your second pull day, right? A lot of people will throw in some hamstrings with their pull day, as, RDLs, hit your erectors, which is part of your back, is a pulling movement anyway. And then 6 days a week, as a natural, guys, I'm going to be honest, I think 5 days a week is the perfect amount of time to train. Once you start bumping up to different splits, I would like to start going with 8-day splits. So a really good one is push, pull, legs, rest, repeat, right? So that's technically an 8-day split. You do push, pull, legs, rest, and then push 2, pull 2, legs 2, rest, repeat, right? So that's an 8-day split. That's an example of that. And then honestly, guys, specialized splits for weak body parts honestly aren't really needed until you are an advanced lifter that's been training honestly like 10 plus years. If you're just starting out, if you're a beginner, if you're intermediate, you just need to grow everything. So I would just focus on a standard split that hits everything twice a week, and you can just bring everything up, right? As you advance, you can go into, things like specialized splits where you're hitting your one weak muscle group 3 times a week and everything else twice, or something of that nature, right? How long should I rest? So typically you're always going to want to rest at least 2 minutes in between sets, especially heavy, hard sets that are close to failure, right? You get your heart rate going, music drowns out, you're training hard, you're getting a sweat going, at least 2 minutes, right? Because you do not ever want your previous set to impede your next set. Something like hack squat, guys, that you're just taking it to the death and it's absolutely killing you when you do it. You may want to rest longer, like 3, 4, maybe even 5 minutes, right? You just don't want to get out of that flow state. Once you get the heart rate going, you get into this flow state, you just don't want to lose that focus. But other than that, like, don't be afraid to rest for a while. What you just want to do is you just want to make sure you stay warm. Something very underrated when it comes to training is honestly making sure you have pump covers that keep you warm, whether it's sweats, a hoodie, or sweats and a big t-shirt. You want to stay warm because we want our muscles warm while we're lifting, for injury prevention, for blood flow, for being ready for our hard, heavy, close to failure sets. So don't skip out on the pump covers, guys. So what rep ranges should I do? I know we already talked about why does exercise order matter. What rep range should I do? So honestly, it depends, right? So something for me where I have a very easy time having good execution is legs, right? I can do, a 5 rep, a 6 rep hack squat and keep my form and keep my execution very, very good. But something like my chest, I struggle with feeling it well. I struggle with, my shoulders taking over or starting to move if I go too heavy, for example, like a 4 or 5 rep set, right? So, something like a pushing movement, like a pressing movement, I like to train in a little bit higher rep range, like 6 to 10. And a lot of times I like to program in a top set and a back off. So that's going to be a lower rep range set, right? Where pretty much almost every single rep is, close to your 5 rep max, and every single rep is very stimulating with mechanical tension. So you'll do a set of that, right, in the 6 to 8 rep range, nice and heavy with good execution. And then after that, right, you push, right, muscles are fatigued, you're not going to be as strong for the second set, I like to drop the weight and do a back off set, still to failure, but in a higher rep range. And failing in that higher rep range allows me to really prioritize the execution of the movement a lot more and still get just as much out of my set because I'm still taking it to failure. I'm just lightening the load in order to prioritize execution and prioritize, that second set. Because there's always, if you truly take a first set to failure, there's going to be a drop off. All right. And I don't do that every time, right? I might do 2 to 3 sets in the 6 to 8 rep range, right? If I like something. But a lot of times on something like a back movement or a chest movement, right? I'm going to drop the weight a little bit and fail in the 8 to 10 rep range. The 8 to 10 rep range for me is just personally my sweet spot where, the weight is heavy, but I can still have really, really good execution because that is very, very important. As you get more advanced into training, you may be able to have very, very good execution on even, 4, 5 rep sets. But most people, they are not there yet. I'm not even there yet. It is very, very hard to do. So simply, rep ranges are the least of your concerns. The most of your concerns is training close to failure. All right, guys? So choose the rep ranges you like. Typically, for hypertrophy, it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 15, right? What rep range should you do? Honestly, in my opinion, a mix, right? On some things, like a hack squat, right? You're going to be wanting to work in the lower rep range. Something like a curl, where it's harder to have better execution, you might want to work in a higher rep range, right? Like the 10 to 12 rep range, if that makes sense. A lot of people can, have great execution and great form in the lower rep ranges, but for most of us, there's going to be certain exercises where we should prioritize a bit of a higher rep range, like the 8 to 12 rep range, simply for execution, for better form. So, key takeaways from today, from training part 2. Mechanical tension drives hypertrophy. How do we achieve mechanical tension? Heavy and close to failure sets, right? So it's going to be, I really like the 6 to 12 rep range, all right? So just various, sets within the 6 to 12 rep range. Most people are going to recover the best from 2 to 3 sets. Some things like the side delt I've seen in my own training and some of my clients' training, and I've learned from, people a lot smarter than me that the side delts seem to be able to handle more volume. So sometimes I'll push up side delt volume a bit more than other muscle groups. But mechanical tension can be created with heavy and light loads. So I want you guys to realize that you can build muscle with heavy and with light loads. It is all about how heavy and close to failure you train though. So you have to treat these sets like you have to hit them on the bullseye. Imagine you have your 2 sets, right? You have your 2 or 3 sets programmed in. You got to take a bullseye and imagine you're nailing it every single time. If not, you're just wasting sets because you have to achieve failure. Like it doesn't matter if the load is light and you're trying to hit 12 reps, right? It doesn't matter if the load is heavy, you're hitting a hack squat and you're going for 6 reps, all right? It matters that it is close to failure. Last point here, a certain number of hard sets must happen to optimize hypertrophy. So we can't just go in the gym and, do some stuff for 20 minutes, one set of every single exercise and really expect to get the most out of it and expect to be in the optimal, hypertrophy range for our body. Every single person is different and every single person can recover better from, more volume, or they don't recover as fast, so they need less volume. But typically, most people are going to be good with, 10 to 15 sets a week per muscle group. So there's a certain number of hard sets, right? A certain number of working sets that must happen to optimize your hypertrophy. And, some people will be able to handle more. Some people will be able to handle less. I typically would recommend anywhere from 10 to 15 working sets per week per muscle group. Obviously, there's going to be nuances. There's going to be some things that I might have a little more, some things that I might have a little less, but 10 to 15 per week, right? And if you're hitting everything twice, divided by 2, that's 6 or 7 working sets per training day if you hit everything twice. So those are the 3 main points. Again, mechanical tension drives hypertrophy. Mechanical tension can be created with heavy and light loads, and there's a certain amount of hard sets that must happen to optimize your hypertrophy. So if you guys would like to optimize hypertrophy and optimize your training, click the first link down below in the description to book a coaching consultation call with me, and we'll discuss the next steps going forward for you. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found some value. Peace. I'll see you in part 3.